Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pro AV today. The lighting world has undergone a massive shift in the last 10 to 20 years. And ironically enough, that's probably the last time that most theaters and stages and organizations probably have looked at upgrading their lighting grid, their lighting technologies, things like that. And it's funny because when you think about the innovation that's happened over the last 10, 20 years, things like the price point coming down, lower power consumptions, truer colors, things like that are now things that are achievable that, whenever they initially would have installed those systems were maybe a little bit more challenging, right? And a lot of people use the excuse of, hey, it works and it's functional. And look, wanted to have the conversation today to see if that's an okay mindset. Is that something that people should continue to look at? Or is it something where we really should be talking about upgrading into the newer technology system? So I brought on our buddy Jim Uphoff from ETC to talk about that a little bit more. Jim, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to talk about this. Yeah, I'm the entertainment luminaire product manager in the marketing department here at ETC. So, this is sort of my life on a day-to-day basis is lighting packages and LED fixtures, specifically in that transition from more traditional sources to the LED technologies. So, happy to have a conversation with you.
Well, look, this topic is pretty close to my heart. I mean, I'm a massive sucker for live entertainment, and you have probably seen the same thing that I've seen over the last little bit is people really riding the coattails of legacy lighting systems, right? And whether that's just crazy incandescent bulbs that you can tell haven't been cleaned and and haven't been utilized properly, and there's frayed cables and half the stuff's hung and not safety chained and things like that. And that to me, frankly, is really sad, right? I mean, there's so much opportunity, not only from a scenic design standpoint, but also you look at like environmental standpoint, things like that. There's so many cool things that you could do. But wanted to ask kind of directly. I mean, is that something that you're seeing as well? Are you seeing kind of these legacy systems holding over a little too long?
Yeah, it's a weird mix of realities, right? To be honest, as a company, ETC has prided itself on supporting systems long past what some people might consider to be the expiration date. But knowing that in the entertainment industry, especially in a lot of our customers, realities, budgets are a big thing, and it can be very daunting to look at a system that is getting aged out potentially and look at all these new technologies and try to think, well, where do I start? I don't have the budget to just replace the entire thing all in one step. I have to do it piecemeal. Where do I begin with that? Everything has changed so much since I had those old Source 4s from the 90s or something like that, and now I'm looking at Source 4 LED or some other LED products. The infrastructures have to change. The rigging points potentially might have to change. The console, my control methods might have to change. My entire tech process has to change, and that can people fear change. It's a cliche for a reason, right? That being said, I think the customer base really is excited about these new technologies. I think they want them. I think they want to wake up one morning and walk into their space and have it done. I think that's the reality of the situation, but the process of navigating to get to that point can be very daunting for a lot of sites, and I think that's probably the biggest. I don't think it's a fear of the technology. I think it's a fear of the process to get to that technology that's potentially slowing some people down.
Well, and one of the examples that jumps out too, obviously, when COVID hit, a lot of houses of worship were forced to go to a streaming model, right? And when you look at performance spaces and stages and things like that, house of worship is obviously a significant market for that lighting world. But what happened, and you kind of see or seeing this trickle down a little bit more inside the theatrical spaces as well, is this shift to streaming required an entirely different live setup entirely different lighting setup, because now you're lighting for broadcast. You're not lighting for necessarily aesthetics, scenic things like that. How has that impacted a lot of the decisions that these people are having to make with new systems?
Well, that's actually a really common thing that we hear when we're talking to customers, because one of the things we try to do when we're selling somebody a lighting package is assess their uses, their needs. How do they use the space that they're trying to put this system into? And more frequently, on camera telecasts, on camera recordings, things like that are entering into that list of how do we use our system. And it really is, there is no space in the world anymore that's not at some point going to be used on camera, whether it's somebody's iPhone coming out and they want to make sure that they get a good video that's not flickering from the light sources, or whether it is actually intended with professional lighting setups. So I think that is a big aspect of it, and it is much more complicated in some good ways, but it's much more complicated than it used to be. If you got an incandescent lamp and you put it in a fixture, all you're really concerned about is what are the features of that fixture and how easy is it to use. Now you have all of those considerations, but you also have, well, what's the actual quality of the light coming out of the fixture, and all the different versions of LED arrays that are available, and how do you control them appropriately so that when I'm lighting something, it actually looks good when I see it, when I've lit it. So there's a lot more purchasing decisions, and that translates into the tech process as well when you're putting those things together. So it requires people to gain an education in color science a little bit if they really want to get the full potential of these new technologies.
Well, you talk about color science, and it kind of interestingly enough, I mean, you look at things like the Kelvin scale and white balance and things like that that I don't want to say are primarily for broadcast, but are primarily for broadcast. But then you look at a number of different catalysts, right? Whether it's broadcast, whether it's streaming, whether it's maybe expansion, right? A lot of these theaters are either amphibious now, indoor, outdoor, things like that. What are some of the other catalysts or decision making points where people are a little bit more willing to kind of have these upgrade discussions?
It like I said, it is a very complicated thing. The budget is always the start, right? That's always the finding the funding for any sort of size of an upgrade is going to be the place where most venues are going to need to start. There are venues that have the luxury of being able to do an entire system all at once, but that, unless it's new construction, that doesn't happen nearly as much. So one of the things we've tried to do with our product portfolios is give people options for upgrading their system piecemeal, and looking where the biggest bang for your buck comes when upgrading to an LED system. So, for instance, are you using a cyclorama on the backdrop of your stage? That is a great starting location for a lot of sites. Why? Well, the traditional sources for lighting a cyc are incredibly power hungry. You're running strips of incandescent fixtures that run the full length, maybe top and bottom of that cyc. You're putting gel in front of them. You're doing sort of this weird mix of additive and subtractive color mixing to mix your cyc, which is not super efficient. And you've got gel burning out because you're running those things a lot. And you're using probably more saturated colors than you would use on a stage wash. So the maintenance aspect and the maintenance costs of that, the heat that's being put out by those things. I mean, there's so many places. So it's a very contained system, right? Your cyc system is your cyc system. It works on your cyc, and that's all it really does. So that's a really good place to start. You can get huge energy savings, the efficiency of it, and then you've also got this just infinite gamut of colors that you can put onto your cyc. So that's a really good entry place for a lot of sites to do is that. Then you maybe move out from there and you do stage wash. Maybe then you go to the first electric of your side, box booms or something like that, and you start putting LEDs. The problem with this technology, one of the issues with this technology to keep in mind is that the higher the quality of light that you need, and or the more light you need, the brighter you need those fixtures to be, the cost is going to go up. So the farther you get away from the stage, the more likely those fixtures are to have a higher price point. And so, working your way towards those higher priced fixtures, those higher quality, higher output fixtures, is what we see most of the time. We usually see people transitioning to the stuff around the stage. And then again, what we were talking about before, the actual use case, and making sure you have fixtures that work well on camera, as we were talking about, fixtures that work with your workflow as far as maintenance and performance and ability to fit into the same types of footprint where your old fixtures were. All of these things are considerations that people have to deal with.
Well, Jim, I'm about to say a curse word, and you can't hate me for saying this because it's the reality that we live in as an AV community, but Amazon. Instead of maybe some existing traditional channels, a lot of people, especially kind of those quick need it tomorrow type things, those purchases happen outside of a regulated channel, right? Obviously, you could buy it at Amazon, set it up yourself, things like that. You and I probably agree on this conversation where we pretty much don't recommend that unless it's an absolute emergency. But talk about from an integrator and channel perspective, some of the ways that people can initiate this process, right? Whether it's, hey, I've got 10 grand I could spend on a cyc light, or maybe I've got this installation or this show coming up that I'd like to put some new lights and specs in. What does that process look like from an initiation standpoint?
Well, you bring up a good point, and listen, convenience has value. Convenience has value. That's why Amazon is what Amazon is. I buy from everybody. I mean, everybody buys certain things from Amazon, right? But in this world, in this application, you really, really do get what you pay for in these situations. And the difference between something you're going to be able to buy on Amazon versus something you're going to get through a dealer or a rep in your area is going to be drastically different. And not just in the tangible product that you're buying, but in the support product that you're buying from them as well. Because you buy something from Amazon, that box shows up, barring an out of box failure of that product, that's where your relationship on that product ends with Amazon. And I'm using Amazon in the same way you are, which is in the global sense of just picking up the phone, opening up your laptop, and just ordering something online.
You can drop B&H in there too.
You can really drop any number of distributors, and though they have a purpose and they have a value. And so this is not in any way to disparage those avenues of procuring products. But one of the things that here at ETC that we pride ourselves on is that it is our sales network, our sales channels, and the support that those channels offer the customers. Because for all the reasons we've talked about, and for many that we haven't touched on yet and may not even get to, this is not necessarily simple stuff. Some of it can be, but putting together an entire usable lighting package that has value and longevity, there's a reason people do this for a living. So we have a very extensive network of dealers and reps, and their job is to be the conduit between us, who's the manufacturer, and you, who is the end user. And they are the ones that are sort of the advocates in both directions. They're the advocates of us to the customer and to explain the products and why they would be a good fit, and which of our products or which of some of our competitors' products might be the best fit for your venue. And then they're the channel back to the manufacturer for, this is what the customer needs, this is what's going on their site, how are we going to make it better? So they serve a purpose. And do you pay a premium for that service? Yes, you're going to pay a premium for that service, right? Because they have to make their money as well. And so that is understood. But it is not just a middleman sort of thing where you're paying somebody their taxes, right? They're not just taking their slice of the pie for no work. They serve a purpose there. And if you have a good relationship with that network, if you have a relationship with your local dealer, with your local ETC dealer in our case, then this should be a relationship. It should be bi-directional. It should be somebody that you can call up when you need something. You should call up when you're having a problem. Maybe you're nice and you call up just to have a nice conversation and not to complain about something. But yeah, right. Phone doesn't ring very often just to say, hey, we had a show, it went great, just wanted you to know. But they are providing a service, and that's the reason that we went with the sales channel and the distribution channel that we have as a company is specifically for that, because we understand that the importance of that support. The curtain's about to go up, something's not working, it is imperative. I mean, the show must go on. That's the saying, right? And we live by that credo. It's important to have somebody that you can call, not only us, because we do offer 24/7, 365 technical support for those reasons, but it's important to have somebody local, right, that can come to you. We have offices across the country, but we have dealers in every region, in every state. We have people local that can come and be your advocate and be our advocate to you as well. And I do think that has value, and I do think that that's what makes this whole ecosystem work well, is that we have a manufacturer that's invested in the product, into the customers. We have a dealer and rep network that's invested into the customers and the products, and then we have the customer base that understands the value of what they're paying for and takes advantage of it, honestly.
Well, Jim, you bring up a good point too, especially when you talk about that feedback loop. In some cases, it's even almost a triangle, right? Where everybody's kind of talking to everybody, whether it's through a support standpoint or whether it's a installation standpoint. Everybody is kind of talking to everybody from integrator to hardware manufacturer, manufacturer to end user, and end user obviously to the integrator side. So it changes from time to time. But kind of talking about that specifically, what are the types of feedback that you're getting back from maybe some of these end users or these installations that surprise you a little bit, kind of moving into the next generation of lighting technology?
Boy, it's all over the place. We actually try to get as much feedback as we can. We have a legacy of a lot of interaction with our customer base. So we see we people are not shy to let us know, good and bad, honestly. And I will say it is great because we do often get feedback from people that is just, hey, just use these for the first time on a show, loved them. That does happen. Um, we have processes internally for like handling feedback when it comes in through our tech support department, when it comes in through customer service, to get to R&D or to the product managers like myself, and that sorts of things through our sales channels. But what we hear themes. Certainly there are threads that run through a lot of the things that we hear. At the end of the day, a lot of times we're dealing with artists, and we're trying to supply tools to those artists. Right now, there's a lot of people that may be in this industry that don't consider themselves artists, but I would push back on that a little bit and say you're creating something for somebody to look at that invokes hopefully some sort of emotional response. To me, that's an artist, right? So at the end of the day, they need their tools, they need their palette, they need their brushes, they need their canvases, right? And our job is to just give them the most versatile tools that we can, so that they can do the work the way that they want to. So um, this is where the fearing change comes in a little bit, right? If I have a vision in my head as an artist, as a designer of some sort, I'm trying to translate what I'm envisioning into the real world, so that other people can hopefully get the intended impact. I have my methodologies for that. I have the ways I use this thing to do this thing when I'm trying to do this thing, right? Now, if one of those things changes, and it could be something simple, it could be a console profile that changes so it doesn't mix light the same way. It could be a cable change that now this doesn't plug into that the way it used to. It can be something that has to do with the rigging, that now I can't hang my fixture the way I used. Any of those little disruptions in the process can can make people somewhat uneasy. So we do get a lot of requests when we have a new fixture come out of people saying, but how do I make it work the way the old one? Right? And this, in this transition in general, if we look at the transition from incandescent, more traditional fixtures to LED, it's really interesting. If you look at nothing other than the mechanical design of some of these products, the LED products have been designed almost exclusively to look like the non-LED, the previous generation of products. Why is that? It's not because the technology mandate. We don't need the fixtures to be the same size, to be made out of the same materials, that sort of thing. Most of the time that is done so that the user can put it in their hands and feel like, oh, it's not that big a change, right? So it is one of the things we've had a lot of conversations here at ETC about, is when can we start to get away from the traditional shapes and sizes and packaging of fixtures that we've had before, and really start to utilize this new technology, being LEDs, in whole new ways that take advantage of the fact that they don't put out a lot of heat, that they don't require anywhere near the power, that they can be, you can house them in materials that you could never do with an incandescent lamp, things like that. So it's our job to bring people along and make tools that they can use now, but that they can start to see using in different ways going forward.
Well, you talk about some of those changing expectations, and one of the things that I've always enjoyed about the AV industry is that obviously we kind of have our core nucleus of the concert event world and entertainment theater, but we continually find ways to branch out, right? Whether it's through education, whether it's in areas like hospitality, healthcare, heck, even courts these days have broadcast lighting and things like that, and those are some opportunities really where you can start trying out things like new form factors and trying out new protocols and processes, things like that. But what are some of those new verticals that are coming out really that you guys are seeing a lot of growth in right now?
it really is, as sort of as you were saying, it's popping up everywhere. Obviously, there's lighting and lighting installations, whether they're entertainment, whether they're architectural, whether they're architainment. That, I mean, that's probably the biggest growth, is this concept of architainment, which is venues that are traditionally architectural, but now because of streaming and all sorts of things, are being used in more of an entertainment aspect. I would start to put things like houses of worship and places like that into that architainment as well, because what we're seeing is people are that have architectural lighting that normally would just be a downlight of 3200 Kelvin light, or 4000 Kelvin light, whatever the venue was specified for. These fixtures, a lot of these fixtures now have the ability to do colors and things like that as well, or to be individually controllable and mappable, pixel maps across a venue. So now I can do all these really dynamic visual effects with lights that 80% of the time are just used for architectural purposes. So you can, I mean, I think anybody that's had any sort of interaction with this industry knows that you can drastically change the mood of a space and the use of a space just by changing the lighting. And I think people are starting to take advantage of that, as things, not only as these fixtures get smaller and less expensive, but as they get more and more capable to be able to do not just a single task. Now you've got a fixture that can do really anything you ask of it. And I say fixture, this can translate to the control sources. I mean, the architectural controls that we have now that really start to blur the lines between what would the feature set that you would see in an entertainment lighting desk console. They can do a lot of the thing. These architectural control systems can now do a lot of those things that a Broadway console could do. And so now you're getting venues that traditionally would have just been, high quality white lights, that are now can be very easily and quickly converted into, event lighting, just by hitting a button on a touch screen on the wall.
Well, Jim, it's incredible to see the new technologies, not only that ETC is putting out, but really across the industry, right? We're coming out of LDI a couple weeks ago, where I'll give you the shameless plug here. You guys released some pretty cool stuff. Will you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, we just a couple of weeks back did a launch event of a couple of new fixtures that we showed at LDI. The pandemic has been a really interesting time as a manufacturer, and this is certainly not exclusive to ETC in any way. But we've found the initially there was a big slowdown as everything slowed down. Then things started to pick back up again, and we've been faced really sort of nonstop with component shortages, as all industry sectors have. And it's been somewhat discouraging, because we've spent a really a large portion of our bandwidth in our R&D department, in our manufacturing department, in our purchasing department, trying to keep existing products shipping to customers. And that has slowed down a lot of our development efforts. But we have persisted with those development efforts, and so we have a bunch of new fixtures that have come out already during the COVID period of time, and we just released some now that we showed at LDI. So we had a set of 3 new moving lights, the Halcyon fixtures, 3 different sizes and 3 different feature sets, but all really strong, bright output, amazingly feature rich moving lights to fit in any venue. So we have a fixture in that family that can really work in any sort of entertainment venue. And then we released some updates to our color source line, which has been a really popular sort of mid-tier, really high quality, high value, I guess, is really what that product line, if I had to surmise it into one thing, it's just really high value products. And we've got some upgrades to those that we call the Color Source V family, and the V really stands for, is Roman numeral V. It's got 5 updates to the Color Source family that include a 5-color array, so combining the previous 2 arrays that we had before, and adding the other big things, adding wireless. So we've added multiverse, City Theatrical's multiverse protocol as standard to all of those fixtures for wireless DMX RDM communication, and NFC, which is another thing that we introduced first in our phosphor studio lights that we released right at the beginning of the pandemic, into our Source 4 LED Series 3 fixtures and Desire Fresnel fixtures, and now we're bringing them into this tier, to this value tier. And I think that's going to be a really important addition of a feature to that tier, because these wireless technologies, multiverse and NFC, I think they play best in that market space. There's going to be a stigma about wireless there is now, and there will be probably for a while, about the reliability of wireless. And City Theatricals Multiverse is incredibly robust, very versatile, fits really well in venues that have wireless, really busy wireless frequency ranges. But these customer bases, academia, houses of worship, live events, I just need a couple of spots up there and I don't want to run, I can plug them in, but I don't want to run data to them, that sort of thing. This wireless protocol, this is where it's going to get used, is in these market segments. And so making it standard in these products puts it out in the world. If you've got it in your fixture anyway, maybe I'll give it a shot and I'll find out how useful and valuable it can be.
Well, Jim, you guys are doing some incredible work over there. I'm a longtime fan and user of the ETC products. And it's frankly, it's inspiring to see the work that you guys are doing to help expand we'll call it the AVL world just for you
Sure.
today. But
I appreciate it.
hey, we got to find a way to get you back on in the future. There's always
Yeah.
more lighting questions that we have, whether it be scenic, whether it be broadcast. It's always a pretty hot topic in AV for a number of reasons. But Jim, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I could talk about this all day, so I'm happy to come back anytime.
And thank you guys for watching. Be sure to tune in next time.